is 4 weeks until Election Day today. So how is the weather coinciding with the current moment we are in this election cycle?
In so many ways, Kailey, it's really interesting. One, a lot of people in North Carolina and Florida and Georgia may find it inconvenient to vote. It may suppress turnout in some of these places. They may decide food, water, shelter comes before political activity, or they may not be able to get their ballots or their mail people coming to them. So it's all, that is going to be part of the mess. But more importantly in this case is the amount of political disinformation going around that is actually endangering people. It's one thing to spread false rumors about things, but what Republicans who are doing this don't seem to realize is that it has real-life consequences. And that is this misinformation about what FEMA is doing, is making people not apply for aid that they need because they don't believe they're going to get it. They don't believe FEMA has enough money, all the way up to the more silly things like who called whom and who's taking whose calls and things like that. Right. It got so bad that a North Carolina Republican congressman today put out a debunking press release starting with nobody can control the weather because of a tweet from Marjorie Taylor Greene who has suggested that Jewish space lasers run by the Rothschilds are affecting the world. And now she had said that that they are controlling the weather as well. And we have a congressman actually debunking that. So that's how bad it's
He considers himself one of the mountain people, as he said, and has been in Western North Carolina, seeing this firsthand. In some cases, people refusing, not allowing FEMA crews to pass because they've been told that FEMA's confiscating property of some people who've left things behind here. Kamala Harris responded to this today. She was on The View, on one of the 3 shows she appeared on, as we mentioned, part of this media blitz. Here's what she said about Donald Trump and Hurricane Milton.
The idea that somebody would be playing political games for the sake of himself, but this is so consistent about Donald Trump. He puts himself before the needs of others. I fear that he really lacks empathy on a very basic level to care about the suffering of other people and then understand the role of a leader is not to beat people down, it's to lift people up.
Absolutely.
Especially in a time of crisis.
There you have the vice president. FEMA has now had to post a rumor response page to answer to some of the same stories and same rumors that you're talking about here. Getting back to Kailey's first question, what's the net effect on a campaign with this going on?
Well, all of them are trying to politicize it.
Does it depend what you read?
Yeah, it just depends what you read. Exactly. I mean, people should be going to FEMA. People should be going to direct sources for this, not Twitter, or excuse me, not X, not Facebook, not social media sites or irresponsible news organizations. They really should be going to the source to get the information they need to survive this deadly storm that's about to hit them. Well,
we're going to be keeping tabs on this storm for you, of course. Bloomberg's Wendy Benjaminson, thank you so much, as always. Turning our attention to the conflict in the Middle East now, Israeli Defense Minister Gallant was scheduled to visit with his U.S. counterpart in Washington tomorrow. Until this.
On Secretary Austin's bilat with Minister Gallant, we were just informed that Minister Gallant will be postponing his trip to Washington, D.C. Secretary Austin looks forward to seeing him soon.
Joining us now, Bloomberg's Nick Wadhams, who runs our national security coverage here in Washington. Nick, what do you make of this development? What prompts the postponement, if not the cancellation?
Well, what we're hearing essentially is that Prime Minister Netanyahu recalled Gallant back to Israel, just told him not to leave because he said he wanted to talk to President Biden first, which he has not done since August 21st, I believe. And also he wants the Israeli Security Cabinet essentially to vote on what its plan will be for its retaliation against Iran, which we're all sort of expecting to come at any time. I mean, I think the optics of this are very telling. There's been this big push and pull between the U.S. and Israel. How much leverage does the U.S. have? Israel has repeatedly ignored U.S. demands as it prosecutes its war against Hamas and Hezbollah. And there's a big one here. You know, maybe Prime Minister Netanyahu, what we're hearing is he doesn't want to make it look like there may be some, undue U.S. influence that's going to shape his actions. So it really gets to this bigger issue of the U.S. trying to exert leverage, Israel repeatedly defying U.S. leverage. But, I mean, however you look at it, it does look to me like a bit of a snub where you're supposed to have these consultations and then he's saying, forget it, not for now.
But is this a sign that the Israeli response to Iran's missile attack or attempted attack last week is coming soon if he wants everybody there physically in person to make these decisions?
Well, that was certainly the impression that folks were getting that we were talking to. Like, listen, would he really do this response with the defense minister overseas in the U.S.? Probably not. He wants him there to vote on the response, and then I think you would expect to see it almost imminently after that. So, I mean, we're really just bracing for this to come at any time. At the same time, we do know that the U.S. this is very much a live ball for them, and they are still working behind the scenes to shape the Israeli response so it doesn't provoke further escalatory exchanges with Iran that could then, where that leads is anybody's guess.